This is the story of James, a hardworking entrepreneur, and Clara, his charming and seemingly perfect wife. Their life together looked like something out of a picture book. Successful careers, a beautiful daughter, and a home in the quiet suburbs. But behind the polished surface, cracks were forming, and James was about to discover a betrayal that would shake his world to its core. Their 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, was their pride and joy, a bundle of energy who adored both her parents. Weekends were often spent at their vacation home on the coast, a dream that Clara had always wanted to fulfill. To the outside world, they seemed to have it all. But life isn't always what it seems. Over the years, James began to notice subtle changes in Clara. She seemed more distant, her attention often elsewhere. Her phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always in her hand, screen turned away. She started working late more often, brushing off James's questions with vague excuses. He wanted to believe it was just the stress of work or the busyness of life, but something about Clara's behavior left him uneasy. Little did James know his instincts were right. Beneath the surface of their perfect life lay secrets that would soon come to light. And when they did, James wouldn't just sit back and let his world fall apart. What happened next would turn betrayal into the ultimate act of revenge. Tell me first, where are you all watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love to know from where my audience approached me. James Carter was the kind of man who believed in hard work and loyalty. At 34, he was proud of what he'd built. A thriving plumbing business co-owned with a few close friends, a loving marriage to his beautiful wife Clara, and a life centered around their 7-year-old daughter, Sophie. Every day, James threw himself into his work with one goal in mind: providing a stable and happy life for his family. Clara, 31, was everything James could have dreamed of in a partner. Smart, ambitious, and effortlessly charming. Working as an executive assistant at a luxury car dealership, she was always polished and put together. Clara had a magnetic presence that drew people to her, making her the life of every gathering they attended. To James, she wasn't just his wife. She was his best friend, the person he trusted above all else. But Clara hadn't always lived the picture-perfect life. Before meeting James, she'd been in a tumultuous relationship with Nathan Blake, the heir to a wealthy family and a man known for his charisma and his arrogance. Nathan had swept Clara off her feet during their whirlwind romance, but the relationship had been far from ideal. He cheated on her repeatedly, treating her more like a trophy than a partner. Their engagement ended in scandal when Nathan was caught with another man's wife, leading to a very public breakup that left Clara humiliated. When James met Clara, she was guarded but hopeful, looking to rebuild her life. Over time, they fell in love and created a future together. James admired her resilience and thought their shared struggles had forged an unbreakable bond. But as years passed, subtle cracks began to form in their seemingly perfect marriage. It started with the little things: Clara's phone always within arm's reach, the screen angled away. Her cheerful demeanor shifted, replaced by mood swings that James couldn't explain. Then came the late nights at work, always justified by deadlines and last-minute meetings. When James expressed concern, Clara would laugh it off. "You're overthinking things," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "I'm just busy, that's all." But James couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was wrong. They argued more often, and the warmth that once defined their relationship seemed to fade. Clara became more withdrawn, often retreating into her own world, while James found himself feeling increasingly isolated. The tipping point came when James overheard a passing comment from one of Clara's co-workers. "Clara sure has been spending a lot of time with Nathan lately," the man said with a chuckle. James froze, his mind racing. Nathan? The name sent a chill down his spine. He thought Nathan was a part of Clara's past, a chapter she had firmly closed. From that moment on, James couldn't ignore the growing tension in their relationship. He tried to confront Clara about it, but her answers only raised more questions. Little did he know, the answers he sought would soon come crashing into his life, and nothing would ever be the same. James was used to Clara's busy work schedule, but when she announced she'd be going on a week-long business trip to Miami, something didn't sit right with him. Clara had been unusually excited about the trip, talking at length about the big opportunity it presented and how much her boss trusted her to represent the company. "It's a luxury conference," Clara said, her eyes lighting up. "Executives, industry leaders, it's a big deal." James nodded, though he couldn't help but notice her evasive tone when he asked for details. "So, who's going with you?" he asked casually. "Oh, just a few colleagues," Clara replied, brushing him off. "It's nothing glamorous. Just a lot of meetings and networking," but her enthusiasm didn't match her words. Clara spent hours meticulously planning her wardrobe, packing dresses James had never seen her wear to work before. She even purchased new luggage for the trip. When James half-joked, "Are you sure this is a work trip and not a vacation?" Clara's laughter felt forced. As the days passed, James's unease grew. Clara was glued to her phone more than usual, texting late into the night. When he glanced over at the screen, she quickly locked it. "Work stuff," she said with a smile, but James couldn't ignore the pit forming in his stomach. The night before Clara's departure, James's suspicions took a dark turn. Clara left her tablet on the kitchen counter, still logged into her email. It was unusual for her to be so careless, and James hesitated before picking it up. He felt a pang of guilt but told himself he just needed to put his mind at ease. What he found shattered his world. In her inbox were a series of emails between Clara and Nathan. The subject lines alone were enough to send his heart racing. "Looking forward to Miami," and "Can't wait to see you." James's hands trembled as he clicked on the messages. They weren't just catching up. They were planning a romantic getaway. Clara had booked her ticket alongside Nathan's, and the emails were filled with flirtatious banter and thinly veiled promises of intimacy. The final blow came when James scrolled further and found attached photos of Nathan. In one, he was lounging by a pool, holding a drink and smiling. The caption read, "Can't wait for this view to get even better." James felt sick. His mind raced with disbelief and fury. How could Clara do this to him? He thought of Sophie, of the life they had built together, and of every sacrifice he'd made for their family. And yet, Clara was throwing it all away for a fling with a man who had already betrayed her once. That night, James barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the emails, the photos, and the lies Clara had fed him over the past weeks. By morning, his heartbreak had hardened into anger. He wasn't going to sit idly by while Clara made a fool of him. James resolved to take action, but he knew he had to be smart about it. Clara was cunning, and confronting her without a plan would only give her an opportunity to twist the narrative. No, he needed proof, undeniable, irrefutable evidence, and a strategy to ensure she couldn't wriggle out of this. As Clara left for the airport the next morning, James kissed her goodbye with a forced smile. "Have a great trip," he said, masking the storm brewing inside him. Clara, oblivious, waved cheerfully as she drove away. The moment her car disappeared down the street, James sat down at his laptop and began making calls. He was done playing the fool. Clara had made her choice, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. The morning after Clara left for Miami, James sat in the quiet of their kitchen, the weight of her betrayal pressing heavily on his chest. He stared at his untouched coffee, the swirling steam reflecting the chaos in his mind. Clara's lies were no longer just suspicions, they were cold, hard facts. But wallowing in heartbreak wasn't an option. He needed to act. James's first move was to seek legal counsel. He spent the better part of the day researching divorce attorneys online, looking for someone with a reputation for handling high-stakes cases. He finally landed on Michael Hayes, a seasoned lawyer known for his sharp strategies and no-nonsense approach. Sitting across from Michael in the lawyer's sleek downtown office, James laid out the situation. "I need to protect myself, my daughter, and everything I've worked for," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Michael nodded, taking detailed notes as James recounted Clara's affair, the emails, and her trip to Miami. "You've done the right thing coming here first," Michael said. "Here's what we'll do. First, we'll secure your financial assets. Do you and Clara share any joint accounts?" James nodded. "Yes, we've been saving for a house. There's quite a bit in there." Michael's expression turned serious. We'll move those funds into an account solely in your name. Given the circumstances, this is justified. We'll also prepare divorce papers and ensure you have a rock-solid case. Once everything is in place, we'll serve her when she gets back." James agreed, feeling a flicker of control return to his life. Over the next few days, he followed Michael's advice meticulously. He gathered financial documents, transferred the funds, and provided copies of the incriminating emails and photos. Each step, though painful, felt like reclaiming a piece of his dignity. But James wasn't done. Clara wasn't the only one who needed to face the fallout of her actions. Nathan, her affair partner, was married, and James knew his wife, Lauren, deserved to know the truth. After some digging, James found Lauren's contact information and dialed her number. His heart pounded as the line rang, but when she answered, he spoke with calm determination. "Lauren, my name is James Carter. I'm calling because your husband, Nathan, is having an affair with my wife." There was a pause, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "What did you just say?" Lauren's voice was cold, her composure cracking. James laid out the details, sparing nothing. He told her about the emails, the planned trip to Miami, and the photos he had uncovered. By the time he finished, Lauren's tone had shifted from disbelief to quiet fury. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I've suspected something for a while, but this confirms it. I'll handle it from here." Hanging up, James felt a grim sense of satisfaction. He didn't know exactly what Lauren would do, but he trusted that Nathan's comfortable world was about to implode. With his legal and emotional groundwork laid, James turned his attention to the confrontation he knew was inevitable. He wanted to ensure that when Clara returned, she would be met with the full weight of her choices. Michael helped James finalize the divorce papers, which included not only the financial details but also a carefully worded letter. In it, James laid out his feelings with brutal honesty. "Clara, you've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I filed for divorce and I've moved on. You're free to pursue whatever, or whoever, you want without worrying about me. It's clear that my feelings were never a priority for you anyway. Enjoy your trip, James." James sent copies of the divorce papers and the letter to the hotel where Clara and Nathan were staying, ensuring they would be waiting for her upon arrival. The last piece of his plan was more personal. He couldn't bear to stay in the house that now felt tainted by Clara's betrayal. Instead, he arranged a trip for himself and Sophie. They would spend the week in Florida with friends, creating new memories far from the shadows of Clara's deceit. As James packed their bags, he felt a strange sense of peace. The storm was far from over, but he had done everything in his power to protect himself and his daughter. Now all that remained was to let the truth do its work. When Clara returned, she would find not the man she had deceived, but a man who had reclaimed his life. And James would be ready for the next chapter. The day Clara returned from her business trip, James was nowhere to be found. She pulled into the driveway, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and nervous anticipation. The trip hadn't gone exactly as planned. Nathan's behavior had been more erratic than charming, and there had been tension between them. But Clara pushed those thoughts aside, deciding that what James didn't know wouldn't hurt him. As she stepped out of the car, she noticed something strange. The house felt eerily quiet. No warm lights in the windows, no sound of Sophie laughing or playing. Clara's brow furrowed as she carried her luggage to the front door. She turned the key and stepped inside, only to be greeted by a chilling emptiness. "James?" she called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. There was no response, only the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She set her bags down and walked through the house, calling his name again. On the dining room table, she noticed an envelope with her name scrawled across the front. Next to it was a stack of papers. Her stomach tightened as she picked them up. The first page was a letter from James. "Clara, you've made your choice and now I've made mine. I filed for divorce. The house, the savings, and the life we built together are no longer yours to take for granted. Sophie and I are away for the week, and I suggest you use this time to reflect on your actions. The papers are final. Consider this my goodbye, James." Clara's hands trembled as she read the words. She quickly flipped through the stack, realizing with horror that they were divorce papers, already filed and legally binding. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she sank into a chair, disbelief giving way to panic. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Fumbling to unlock it, she saw a series of missed calls and messages from Nathan's wife, Lauren. Clara's heart raced as she read the cold, scathing text at the top of the thread. "I know everything. Don't contact my husband again." The room seemed to spin as the full weight of what had happened settled over her. James knew, Lauren knew, and Nathan had cast her aside the moment the fallout began. Desperate, Clara dialed James's number, but the call went straight to voicemail. She left a frantic message, her voice breaking. "James, please, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Nothing happened, I swear. Please call me back." But there was no reply. In the days that followed, Clara's attempts to reach James grew increasingly desperate. She texted, called, and even emailed him, begging for a chance to explain. Each message was met with silence. The realization that James wasn't playing games, he was truly done, hit her like a tidal wave. When James and Sophie returned a week later, Clara was waiting for them on the porch, her face pale and tear-streaked. As they stepped out of the car, she rushed toward James. "James, please, just listen to me," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I never meant to hurt you." James held Sophie's hand tightly, his face calm but unreadable. "Sophie, go inside and wait for me," he said gently. Sophie glanced between her parents before nodding and running inside. James turned back to Clara, his expression cold and resolute. "There's nothing to fix, Clara. You made your choice when you decided to lie to me and betray our marriage. I won't let you gaslight me into thinking this was just a mistake." Tears streamed down Clara's face as she stepped closer. "It wasn't what you think. Nathan and I didn't—" "Stop," James interrupted, his voice firm but even. "Don't insult me by trying to explain. I saw the emails. I saw the plans. Whether or not something happened physically doesn't matter. You prioritized him over me, over Sophie, and over everything we built together. That's betrayal enough." Clara collapsed onto the porch steps, her sobs racking her body. "I was stupid," she whispered. "I didn't think it through. I thought it wouldn't matter." "It does matter," James said, his voice softening but remaining firm. "It matters because it shows exactly how little you valued our marriage. You may regret it now, but that doesn't change what you've done." She looked up at him, desperation in her eyes. "Please, James, I'll do anything. Just don't leave me." James stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he shook his head. "You already left me, Clara. You left the moment you decided he was worth more of your time and energy than I was. This is over." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him and leaving Clara on the porch. For James, the confrontation wasn't just an end. It was a new beginning. For Clara, it was the realization that her choices had cost her everything. The confrontation with James marked the beginning of Clara's downward spiral. She had believed she could control the narrative, smooth things over, and return to her normal life. But James's cold resolve left her shaken, and her world quickly unraveled as the weight of her choices came crashing down. The first blow came when word of her affair spread through their social circle. James, though discreet, confided in a few close friends about the divorce and the reason behind it. The news spread like wildfire. Friends who once admired Clara's charm and poise turned cold. Invitations to dinners and gatherings dried up. The whispers followed her wherever she went, and Clara found herself increasingly isolated. It wasn't long before the fallout reached her workplace. Clara had always prided herself on her professionalism and ambition, but her affair with Nathan, who had connections in the local business community, became a public embarrassment. The dealership's management took note of the scandal and began scrutinizing her performance. When they discovered inconsistencies in her travel reimbursements, expenses tied to the Miami trip, Clara was called into a meeting with her supervisor. "Clara, this company values integrity above all else," her boss said, his tone clipped. "Given the circumstances, We have no choice but to terminate your employment effective immediately. The words hit her like a hammer. Clara walked out of the dealership with her belongings in a box, her head hanging low. The career she had worked so hard to build was gone, and with it, her financial security. Nathan, the man she had risked everything for, wasn't faring much better. His wife, Lauren, had taken swift action after learning of his affair. She filed for divorce, citing infidelity as the primary reason. The news sent shockwaves through Nathan's social and professional circles. Once a respected figure, he became a pariah almost overnight. Lauren didn't stop at divorce. She leveraged her family's legal team to ensure she walked away with a significant portion of their shared assets, leaving Nathan scrambling to maintain his lavish lifestyle. He retreated into his old ways, frequenting bars and chasing fleeting romances. But the charm that once worked for him seemed to have lost its power. Clara, too, felt the sting of rejection. She attempted to reconnect with Nathan, hoping to salvage some semblance of a relationship, but he wanted nothing to do with her. "I've got enough problems," he told her coldly. "I don't need you adding to them." With Nathan gone, her job lost, and her reputation in tatters, Clara faced the harsh reality of her situation. She sold their vacation home, a property she had once cherished, to cover mounting bills. The money was a temporary reprieve, but it wasn't enough to sustain the life she was accustomed to. Her relationships with family and friends deteriorated as well. Her parents, disappointed and embarrassed by her actions, offered minimal support. Even her closest friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the drama surrounding her life. Clara tried dating again, but her newfound reputation followed her, and most relationships fizzled before they even began. Alone in a small, modest apartment, Clara spent her days searching for jobs and scrolling through old photos of the life she had lost. Every corner of her new reality was a painful reminder of what she had sacrificed. The vibrant, confident woman she once was had been replaced by someone she barely recognized. For Nathan, life became a series of empty conquests and failed attempts to rebuild his image. For Clara, it was the slow realization that her choices had not only destroyed her marriage but also every meaningful part of her life. While James moved forward, stronger and more fulfilled, Clara remained trapped in the shadow of her mistakes. Her fall from grace was complete, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. In the weeks following the confrontation, James felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in years. Clara's betrayal had left deep scars, but instead of dwelling on the past, James focused on rebuilding his life. The storm had passed, and now it was time to chart a new course. James threw himself into his work. His plumbing business, once a demanding source of stress, became a refuge. He took on new clients, expanded services, and even started mentoring younger employees. His dedication paid off when the business grew significantly over the next year, earning him respect in the community and financial stability he never thought he'd achieve so quickly. But James's renewal wasn't just about professional success. He also made an effort to strengthen his personal life. Over time, he reconnected with old friends, many of whom had been pushed aside during his troubled marriage. Weekly game nights and casual outings became regular fixtures in his life, filling the spaces that had once been dominated by arguments and tension. One day, while dropping Sophie off at her best friend Olivia's house, James found himself chatting with Olivia's mother, Hannah. A warm and genuine person, Hannah had been through her own struggles, including a difficult divorce. As they talked, James found comfort in her kindness and understanding. She didn't judge him or pry into his past. Instead, she offered the simple gift of companionship. At first, their connection was purely platonic. They often spent time together with their daughters, organizing playdates and outings. But over time, something deeper began to grow. James noticed how much he enjoyed being around Hannah. Her laughter, her calm demeanor, and the way she seemed to truly listen when he spoke. One evening, after the girls had fallen asleep during a family movie night, James and Hannah found themselves sitting on her porch, sipping tea under the stars. The conversation drifted from their children to their dreams for the future. For the first time in a long while, James allowed himself to imagine what life could look like with someone new. "Hannah," he said, his voice steady but soft, "I don't know where this is going, but I know that being around you makes me feel like myself again." Hannah smiled, her eyes meeting his. "I feel the same, James. Maybe we can figure it out together." Over the following months, their relationship blossomed. It was nothing like what James had experienced with Clara. There were no secrets, no games. Just two people finding joy in each other's company. Hannah helped James see that love could be simple, honest, and healing. A year later, James and Hannah decided to take the next step. They married in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Their daughters, Sophie and Olivia, were ecstatic to officially become stepsisters. James's life was no longer defined by the betrayal that had once consumed him. Instead, it was a life filled with love, trust, and hope for the future. He had turned his pain into strength, proving that even after the darkest storms, a brighter horizon was always possible. As James sat on the porch of his new home, watching Sophie and Olivia play in the yard, he reflected on how far he had come. There was a time when betrayal had left him broken, questioning everything he thought he knew about love and trust. But looking back now, he realized that Clara's actions, as painful as they were, had been the turning point in his life. It wasn't easy, James thought, but sometimes the hardest moments are the ones that shape us the most. The betrayal that once consumed him became the fuel for his transformation. It forced him to confront his fears, take control of his life, and find the strength to move forward. Through that journey, he rediscovered himself, reconnected with the people who truly mattered, and ultimately found happiness with someone who valued him in the way he deserved. Betrayal hurts, James mused, but it can also lead to transformation. It can be the push you need to rebuild, to grow, and to find a life you didn't think was possible. Now, James's life was defined not by the pain of the past, but by the love, joy, and trust of the present. And for that, he was grateful. Thank you for joining me on this journey. James's story is a testament to the fact that even in our darkest moments, there's a way forward, a chance for renewal and hope. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more incredible tales of resilience, revenge, and redemption, make sure to subscribe to Unheard Stories. Let me know in the comments. What would you have done in James's shoes? Where are you watching from? Let's keep the conversation going, and I'll see you in the next story.